the gap is real. And the gap is real because of those unconscious biases that we all have about what does a technologist look like. You have to have sponsors at the leadership level that are saying, we encourage and we make room for women in these leadership positions, because without them as role models, the younger women have nothing to look forward to.
Not everyone makes the news, but behind every growth-driving experience, product, and transformation are experts who shape the outcome. Welcome to Behind the Growth, a podcast for digital leaders and those aspiring to become one. Each episode features a candid conversation with a remarkable individual. Join us as we focus on their struggles, wins, and lessons learned you won't find anywhere else. Let's get started.
Welcome to Behind the Growth. I'm your host, Mudassar Malik, and today we're celebrating Lisa Sutherland. And she's the Senior Director, Emerging Markets at Rogers Communication, an incredible leader and a passionate advocate for women in tech. Lisa, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks, Mudassar. I'm so excited to be here today to talk about this topic. So excited.
Excellent. Yeah, let's start. We would love to hear more about you and your career journey. I think that would really set the stage for everyone here.
For sure. So when I started my career, I was a young woman, and I and T were two letters that I weren't really familiar with coming out of university. And I actually started my career on the front line at Rogers. And I quickly got an opportunity to move into an IT position, doing pretty rudimentary work on a migration of a company that we bought. And what I realized was the opportunity to influence the customer experience through technology was something that I was pretty good at, A, and B, something that I think was lacking in the IT industry at the time in the early 90s. To have somebody that had a focus on customer experience, but also had an aptitude to problem solve using technology.
That's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. And so, throughout the last 3 decades, I've really built my career in terms of bettering myself, learning new technologies, but always carrying that customer experience with me, no matter where I've gone in the IT industry, and ensuring that we are building solutions for every customer, regardless of who they are.
So over these years, I'm sure you've changed many hats, many responsibilities. So could you just give us a walkthrough of those? Like, what have the portfolios you've been working on?
Yeah, for sure. So I think my secret sauce or my superpower is being able to translate business needs into technology solutions. And although I've had many different roles throughout my career, I think that's the heart of it in every job I've had, is really being able to translate that knowledge of customer needs or business needs into a technology solution. So the different roles that I've had throughout my career has really been about enabling the right experience to happen at the end of the day for both our internal and external customers. And why I think I've had that ability to do it maybe better than some is that I'm not only thinking about it as an employee of the organization, but as an end user customer. And I think sometimes why it's important to have different perspectives to do that is when the people that are developing the solutions are one type of person, which is a lot of the times the young male, you're going to get one type of solution. By having women, diverse aspects, providing the lens on the solution, you're going to see many opportunities to have a more robust experience.
Got it. I think that's tremendous. And, it's a perfect segue into our topic, what we wanted to talk about. And so let's dive into it. And I'm thinking that despite making, good progress, women are still underrepresented in tech, and I would say similarly in leadership roles also. And it, it even gets worse for women of color.
Yes.
So what's your take on the importance of this diversity and its potential impact on stakeholders?
It's huge, right? there are still stigmas today around bias, gender, and women of color, people of color. There's
Mm,
bias there. There's a need to change the culture, right? And
mm,
the culture that's happening today is better, but there's still huge gaps and opportunities when it comes to women. And and I think there's a preconceived notion about what a developer looks like or people in technology look like.
mm,
If you imagine a hackathon and you put
mm.
that image in your head about what a hackathon looks like, what's that picture that you see? Do you see a bunch of guys in hoodies
Yeah,
surrounding eating Doritos and coding all day? Like that's the image that I have in my head because that's what I grew up with and
yeah,
seeing.
yeah.
But if you think about some major industries that are targeted to women,
Mm,
is that who you want developing your solutions, right?
mhm,
Or developing your ideal experience. So anyways, the
mm,
gap is real. And the
mm,
gap is real because of those unconscious biases that we all have about
mm,
what does a technologist look like.
mm,
The role models are few and far between. And I think there's back to the culture, the culture has to be enabled by men and women at the leadership level, right?
mm.
You have to have sponsors at the leadership level that are saying, we encourage and we make room for women in these leadership positions because without them as role models, the younger women have nothing to look forward to.
I'm sure like it has improved over the years, like, and you've gone through the number of transitions. And I'm also thinking that at the start of your career, when you said ID was still something an unknown territory,
Yeah.
like it must have taken a lot of strength to go through, find, anchor yourself, and make your voice felt and heard. So how's that transition like? And I'm sure it's much better now, but just reflect on that.
100%. I think as it, first of all, I was a young woman in
Hmm.
IT and I looked around and there wasn't anybody my age
Hmm.
that looked like me. We had, I was very lucky to be surrounded by a few women that were, I would say, more like middle management in
Hmm.
the industry, but those that were really strategizing were all men.
Hmm.
And there seemed to be this perception there was only enough room for one or two women around the table.
Hmm.
And I
Wow.
think what's changed was the women that were at the table said there wasn't enough room for more, and so they held to that position very closely.
Hmm.
And what's changed today is
Hmm.
there are women like myself and other colleagues that say, "We welcome everybody around the table."
Hmm.
And there's like this scarcity thought. There was a scarcity thought, 25 years ago that there wasn't room. Um, and it's a little bit like love. There's always enough love to go around for everybody if you make enough room in your heart. And so that's how I view the diversity quotient in the industry.
Hmm.
The more love you have to engage and invite more people in,
Hmm.
the better the results are going to be. So that shift has really happened. And I think the other shift that
Hmm.
happened was women felt like if they put their head down and just worked hard, they were going to be noticed.
Hmm.
That was pretty typical of
Hmm.
my generation, Gen X, work hard,
Yeah.
you'll get noticed. Somebody will tap you on the shoulder and you'll get the promotion. But, you know, we didn't advocate for ourselves. Men were advocating for themselves and saying they could do the job, and women were
Hmm.
waiting to be noticed.
Hmm.
And I think the shift, as I've seen further generations come through technology in their careers, they are really learning to advocate for themselves,
Hmm.
understand what they're good at, and lean into those strengths. And so you're seeing more people ask for what they want as opposed to wait for somebody to tell them what they're good at.
Yeah, it's such a
More self
huge
awareness.
Yeah, it's such a huge tell also, like, you don't ask, you don't get, right? So I think that's a huge one. And I agree with you. Like, I'm also noticing there's a lot more drive for women now to be progressive, to take some responsibilities, senior positions. That's fantastic. And the world just the whole place gets better, right? Like I think that's really the key thing here. I let's also bring some lesser known stories to that. I think it's very important to really bring forward some of the contributions that women have made, be it in tech world especially. So something that you would love to share, from what you've noticed over the career.
So, but I think this is a story that a lot of people know, but leading out of the Second World War and even into the 50s,
Hmm.
computer programmers were mostly women. Think about computer
Mm.
programming when you had to
Mm.
draw like on a piece of paper and insert it in a machine. Those were computer programmers.
Mm.
And it was vastly women.
Mm.
And then there was, some studies done by some major computer companies in the late 50s, early 60s that started to define what's the ideal computer programmer. And the study was done, I think it was about 1,000 men and maybe 200 women were part of the study.
Mhm.
And the qualities and skills that they thought were required for a computer program were vastly pointing towards a male-dominated society. But
Mhm.
there were women. I'm sure everybody's also seen the movie Hidden Figures, right?
Mhm.
Of women that were really like at the forefront of NASA in the
Mm.
60s. And these were women of color that were really influencing making a difference, yet they were segregated and they were, stuck in a back room somewhere.
Mm.
But without these women, early programmers in the 50s and these women working at NASA, we would not be where we are today as a society. That first step would never have happened. You can go back into the 1800s. Ada Lovelace is another one, right?
Mm.
But where does it fall off? So how
Mm.
do we get from these pioneer women that were working on cutting edge technology to
Mm.
having to fight in 2023 for 50% equality? Women today are still making up less than 20% of leadership positions in technology. The numbers in the workforce starting out are at like 47%. So where's the drop off that have happened? And are there enough role models? Like, were these
Mm.
role models enough for our children, for our grandchildren to like seek to have these roles?
Mm.
But some of the biggest influencers, are really
Mm.
what I kind of remind myself sometimes is through that those obstacles they had to face, they were still
Mm.
so successful. And how do we get that back for our girls today, right? To know
Mm.
that they could be at the forefront shaping what the world can look like through
Mm.
technology.
Mm. So how do you see that thing happening? Like, what are your thoughts on it? Like, are there some suggestions that you've been thinking through?
Well, I think the stigma, right? I think there's a stigma about what does it mean, back to what I was talking about before about, the image of what it looks like to be in technology.
Yeah.
I think if we encourage our young women and our girls early in life that every role you take, every job that is out there in the world is about problem solving in some way.
Mm.
Technology is no different. It's just a different tool in order to solve the problem. And if you don't have your voice being heard in technology, it is going to shape our world in a way that might leave you behind. And so I think that's the message that I would give the young women today. If you want how you see the world to be left behind, then don't go into technology. But if you want to influence and change the world, have your
Mm.
perspective seen, have your voice
Mm.
heard, because you can change it. Um, there are so many examples in the industry where women were forgotten, right? There's famous, you know, I joke about the famous Apple when Apple first launched their health app 10 years ago. It was a health app. They
Mm.
completely left out women building that health app because they didn't talk about women's menstrual cycles in the health
Mm.
app.
Mm.
That's 50% of their
Mm.
population gone
Mm.
from not being included in that app. And Was it because there was no women around the table building it?
mm,
Car industry, you know, the crash test dummies are built around the male figure.
mm,
And so when crashes happen, women are more likely to get hurt worse because the design was not built around women.
mm,
And so those are small examples of things where if our girls are not involved and included,
mm,
it can really shape and dilute what our future can look like, especially with AI. And
mm.
it's only as good as the inputs it's receiving as we
Yeah.
move forward.
Mm. That's huge. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's a very powerful message. And, I think you and I we were talking about it. Like tech, it's just inevitable. There's no way that the future is going to be without it. Even right now, we struggle not to use and be part of tech every day, right? So I think the earlier we embrace it and we start contributing, the better. I think that's the way it would go. But at the same time, let's also talk about, are there enough mentoring and networking opportunities? Do you think there's enough for women in there, especially in tech?
I think there are opportunities and there's but it's seeking out those opportunities
Hmm.
that we have to make more accessible to everybody.
Hmm.
So a lot of the major corporations in Canada have inclusion and diversity groups where
Hmm.
women can gather and have networking and mentorship opportunities. But where I think it still lacks and it's a bit controversial,
Hmm.
it's the men that have to support the women in order for things to change. The
Hmm.
women supporting women are important because that's the role models you see, but without advocation from people in leadership position, which are still,
Hmm.
80% men, that the shift will not change. And that mentorship, doesn't matter who it comes from, a man or a woman, is super important as we move forward. I think as well, um, there is an opportunity for it to be grassroots, right? We always think that it's a top-down approach with mentorship, but when you look at young women getting together with their peer groups and talking about their struggles and the barriers for them for advancement, this allows them to share and figure out what has worked for them. And I think those opportunities are almost sometimes more important than mentorship.
Hmm.
That peer mentorship
Hmm.
around women starting their careers would have been so useful for me because
Hmm.
sometimes you felt very alone in what was happening. But when you have other women supporting you, you go pretty far together as a team. And that confidence is what is is important to letting you rise in your career.
Hmm. Absolutely. And were there any mentors in your career? Was there's mentorship that played a role in your overall journey? And is there a shout out that you'd like to give to any mentor that you had in your?
I don't know if I'm gonna name names today because there
Sure,
are
yeah, that's
there are
okay.
there are a few. There are a few,
Yeah,
and they were both men and women.
yeah.
But the most important part of mentorship for me was I started to believe in the person that they already knew I was.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it goes back to me thinking about working hard and putting my head down, but they were the ones that pointed out to me, you're already there. You already have the strengths and opportunities. You just have to believe in yourself. And
Hmm.
those were the switches. Those were the folks that really enabled me to see the person I was and the strengths I had and the abilities that I had to move forward and advocate for myself. There's a switch sometimes that like I ask myself sometimes what I would say to my younger self. I
Hmm.
look back
Hmm.
and I said, what would I say if I was 25 again? And that's exactly what I would say. And it's what I say to my mentees right now. Don't worry about the opportunities you have. You're going to fail and you're going to grow from those opportunities. Great. Think about what are your innate strengths that you're better at than anybody else in this entire world? And make sure that you lean into those because those are always going to be your superpowers that nobody else can replicate. And quit being timid about who you are. Advocate for yourself. Advocate for those strengths.
Hmm.
It might not always turn into a promotion or something successful. But
Mm.
if you're timid about it and you're not advocating for yourself, nobody else is going to notice. You have to make sure people are noticing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think stand up for yourself and really be strong there. Are you also, I'm sorry, forgive me if I'm throwing you on the spot, but are you open for mentoring? And if people want to reach out to you or young women who want to reach out to you, are you open for that?
100%. I actually had somebody just recently ask me,
Mm.
would I mentor them? And I said, the first step in mentorship is you investing the time to want to be with me as much as I want to be with you. So
Mm.
I am open to people that really want to spend time learning about themselves and being honest about who they are. And I'm very much willing to do mentorship. I'm also a mom of two girls.
Mm.
And so for me, it's super important that I help change the landscape for them.
Mm.
They always say to me, Mom, why do you count how many women are in a meeting or who's sitting around the table? And I said, so you don't have to.
Wow.
So you don't have
Wow.
to. And so those are the women that I would love to continue to mentor
Mm.
as they start to see different barriers that I did when I was
Mm.
in my 20s. And I hope that they don't ask why there's not enough women around the table, and they're talking about the strategies to change the world.
Love it. Love it. And I think it's very, very important to find a good mentor. Just having a mentor is not good enough. Really going after, finding somebody whom you feel the inspiration is the right fit for you and can guide you into the right direction. I think it's very important for our listeners to also recognize and work on that. So we have Lisa up for grabs on mentorship. So
I'm going to say one more thing on
yeah,
mentorship.
yeah.
Seek out somebody that's a little different than you as well.
Hmm.
And it goes back to what we're talking about, the diversity of thought.
Hmm.
If you seek mentorship that from somebody that is exactly like you, doesn't mean that
Hmm.
you shouldn't
Hmm.
find somebody that resonates with you,
Hmm.
but that looks at things from a little bit of a different perspective. Those
Hmm.
are the people that are going to make you stop and really wonder, am I going in the right direction? Am I applying myself in the right way? Am I asking the right questions? If you seek mentorship from somebody that's already thinking the same questions as you and going in the same direction, it's good, but it's not great.
Hmm.
You really need to seek out somebody that challenges you to be a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And as you know, Mudassar, it's when you're outside of your comfort zone, that means you're
That's the
growing.
only
And
grow. Yeah.
so
Yeah, that's huge. I think that's such a beautiful point that you made. You got to push your boundaries. You got to know what you don't know. And that's when you grow. So thank you for saying that. And Lisa, we're coming up on our time, and I think you've touched upon it, but I would still want to give you an opportunity that, with being so deeply passionate about on this topic, if there is a final message that you would want to give to all the young girls and women who aspire to make their careers in tech or any industry. I think it's just not limited to tech, but I think there's a very important participation that needs to happen. So what's your message to everybody?
I think the message is remember that everything that you do in life, whether it's picking up your phone, interacting at a
Mm.
store, going into a hospital, taking an airplane, those are all things designed by by people around the world. If you want to see it different and you want to influence how things can be present, lean in and take on those challenges because you can make a difference with your beautiful talent, your creativity, your innovation. You can change the world and make it a diverse, beautiful palette for everybody to enjoy.
I love it. Yeah. Bring in your contributions, bring in the impact. Lisa, thank you very much, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners want to connect with you. What's the go-to channel? Would LinkedIn be your preference?
LinkedIn is my preference, Lisa Sutherland, and hope to hear from some of you in the future.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're going to be having a number of people reach out to you. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights on the diversity. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this inspiring conversation with Lisa. Remember, the future of tech is brighter when it's inclusive. So until next time, keep inspiring and keep breaking barriers.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Growth. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow along on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. This podcast is brought to you by Mobile Live, a team of digital experts bringing intelligence and efficiency to how businesses sell, serve, and save. For more episodes of Behind the Growth, please visit mobilelive.ca/podcast.